My name is Shamsuddoha. I work for CPRD. It's called Center for Participatory Research and Development. We do different kind of activities, particularly research on climate change impact, on climate change policies, and try to influence national planning process and also international negotiation with the local perspective. And our intention is to ensure justice in climate change negotiation and also when a plans develop at national level. So we do lots of activities in terms of advocacy, capacity building, and research. And you, Nayoka, being the first secretary at SIDA in Bangladesh, you joined in our many events, and fortunately, I got you here. When we, meet in Bangladesh, we discuss other issues, how we could help Bangladesh youth group, and also implementing research, advocacy, making changes. So this is my maybe eighth, ninth COP.
Wow.
I am joining COP since many years, maybe since 2009 actively.
Oh, okay.
And we develop a kind of policy narrative around COP discussion, decision making, and negotiation. So it's great to be here and great to meet you here.
Yeah. And then you were also first part of the government negotiations, and then now you are with civil society.
Right.
Yeah, putting us into account.
I started my negotiation as
Yeah.
a government delegate in my early age, maybe, and I served government delegation maybe 5-6 years. Then I found that this is very, methodological or procedural, and I need to follow the agenda item. What the other party says. It is very difficult to, include some different aspects, civil society demand. For instance, we are talking about displacement and migration, and many countries say that this is not in the agenda item. And this time we are trying to promote transboundary issues of adaptation because climate change impacts are cascading, particularly in the South Asian Delta. So when we talk about these some radical issues, civil society issues, then sometimes government's narrative, agenda denies to accept those. So I thought this is better to work as a civil society so that we can communicate civil society biases to the global agenda. So as you know that the entire discourse of loss and damage and initially entire discourse of adaptation is also promoted by civil societies.
Yeah.
Compensation demand is profiled by the civil society. So being a civil society, I found more powerful communicating people's bias to the global policy discourses.
Yes. Yeah. And okay, so it's interesting you said that we've met in Bangladesh. We have so many collaborations there because I work with the Embassy of Sweden, supporting the environment and climate partnerships that the Swedish government has in Bangladesh. However, for this COP, my first COP, so I'm very excited. So for this COP, I am part of the Swedish delegation. And I am currently the only one representing Sweden, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA, here, because my colleagues were here the first week. So now is my turn to cover the partnership. So my perspective now will be global, following the different partnership collaborations Sweden has. And as you said, as Sweden, we rely so much on civil society and the expertise that you bring to the table, the fact that you can connect between what is happening on the ground and also the policies that are being formulated but seem to get stuck at the policy documentary level. So I think for us, the challenge right now here in the COP is how to actually see to it that the documents that are part of the Paris Agreement, like the national adaptation plans, for instance, the nationally determined contributions, that these are not just documents, but these are actually the framework for like accelerated collaboration between Sweden and other development partners, the government of Bangladesh, and civil society. And it's
yes, great, amazing. And I follow your work in Bangladesh, and you are very, popular in Bangladesh for many different reasons, because you own Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is one of the most climate vulnerable countries due to exposure to the climate change induced events and also fragility, because most of the communities, those who live in the climate change exposed areas, they are not well prepared to adapt.
Yes.
There is a resource constraint, capacity constraint. Given all the adversities, Bangladesh is struggling to adapt to the impacts of climate change. But again, when we come to the COP, Conference of the Parties, there are huge expectations around COP, and
Yes.
expectations are around having money. And this COP also turned this money. And this COP is mandated to set a new collective quantified goal for long-term activities, and that activities would include adaptation, mitigation, technology transfer, and also we are going to include loss and damage also under the NCQZ. But this is unlikely because many countries didn't come here, and I found that multilateralism is declining, the spirit of multilateralism, and countries are talking bilaterally. They are supporting one country, another country for adaptation, mitigation, others. And as I understand, as I know that Swedish government is not stepping back and coming forward. And they came forward with a new climate package. And as I understand that, that package would include all the elements of climate change action that has been defined under the Paris Agreement.
Yes.
So could you please briefly, elaborate about the package, what is mandate and also funding size, and how Bangladesh would get benefit from this new package?
Thank you for that. I was actually feeling quite inspired, but also very focused when I was asked to be part of the Swedish delegation now, covering a bit more of the global discussions, because it's very clear what the Swedish government wants to push here at COP. One, it's the urgency. We know that we are so close to overreaching the 1.5 global warming threshold that will spell disaster for so many parts of the world. So the urgency is still there, and the science is behind this urgency. The second one is opportunity, of course, because when we are just filled with all this gloom and doom messaging, people tend to not know how to act, right? But there is a lot of opportunity now to change the economic growth trajectories of countries into much more greener, sustainable, and a climate resilient trajectory. And there's a lot of opportunities in terms of technology, new skills, new employment opportunities, and new types of funding, when you blend different sources together. But this is just Sweden, because here at COP, Sweden is part of the EU.
Right.
And the EU is also stepping up its action. In Bangladesh, we are putting a lot of investments in renewable energy, for instance, supporting the a just and green transition for Bangladesh. And that is one of the things that we have to work with. But since you mentioned some of the new things announced by Sweden, I'm very proud that Sweden has committed new funds to the loss and damage fund. So we have committed $90 million to that one just for this year. We have also committed very substantial funding to the GCF, the Green Climate Fund. So over the next 4 years, we have huge commitments there. We are providing new funding to the Adaptation Fund, the Global Environment Facility, the NDC Partnership Fund, the UN, the UN Disaster Risk Reduction Fund, Early Warning Systems for All, the LDC Countries Fund, etc. And all these are new additional funding that's on top of this bilateral and regional and global funding. Because we believe that the climate crisis has to be a multilateral approach. There is no bound, there's no political, there's no geographic boundaries for climate change, the impacts and the actions, right?
Right, but this is encouraging that, as you said, that Swedish government and also EU. From my, journey with COP, I found European Union progressive than the other countries because I have some reservation about other countries who blocked negotiation, loss and damage, mitigation, and others. But I found European Union progressive, and which is not that far from the position of LDCs.
Yeah.
But my concern is that when we talk about climate finance, I found that countries prefer bilateral engagement rather than providing fund under the UNFCCC mechanism. For instance, this time the adaptation fund is has a target to mobilize maybe 300 or 200 billion, but it's not getting that kind of commitment, even only for mobilizing 300 million US dollar. Countries also committed to double their adaptation fund from the level of 2019 by 2025, but still there is no roadmap. So I found that the UNFCCC mechanism are not getting enough fund uh, that could be directly accessed by the countries. On the other hand, there are funds if there is a bilateral mechanism or under the other mechanism. So do you think that it will, yes, it is strengthening the bilateral engagement and support, but on the other hand, it is also weakening the multilateral funding channels and mechanism. So, what's your opinion in this?
Yeah, there are many dimensions to this because one, we are talking about public funding primarily coming
Right,
from the
right.
governments, coming from the taxes that a person like me pays, and then this is part of the bilateral commitments of the Swedish government. But then there's also other funding that has to be tapped into, and these kinds of funding need mechanisms to be channeled from global all the way down, because at the end of the day our interest is that the household level
Also,
in
right.
coastal areas or the riverine areas of Bangladesh who are just who are facing climate change on a day-to-day basis, these are the ones who have to be able to benefit from adaptation resources. But there needs to be like a lot of this governance, accountability, monitoring systems at so many levels, right?
Right.
Now, the multilateral, the IFIs, they have sort of like established the systems for channeling these things down. And then the expectation is that national governments also set up their equivalent systems, right? So this is where let's say if you give the example of the loss and damage fund, which is hot as well, a hot topic here, there has to be agreement, a standardized way for countries to access the global fund according to prioritization and need, and then have the system in place nationally so that the resources are distributed where it is needed most. But we're only talking about a small part of the financing, right? We still haven't established, or maybe it's happening in many other countries, but not where it's.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Great discussion, because I also often do lots of critique about governance.
Yes.
In Bangladesh, and maybe in other countries, governance is a challenge for adaptation. And I found that there are many stress on adaptation, development stress, governance gap, and also to some extent, people are not getting enough money who deserve this. Most of the money, funds are eroded in between, or maybe for other activities, procurement, capacity building, and others. So, real benefit to the communities are not that much. Given the context, I think bilateral mechanism also should support countries so that they can develop their governance structure, institutional structure, capacity building. So this is sustainable. So, leaving the governance challenges and the other challenges, we cannot ensure proper utilization of money, and we cannot ensure benefit of climate change funds.
Yeah.
So I think you know better than me too. I think we also should work with the national government so that they can also develop their governance skill, and also accountability to the communities.
Yes.
And there is a strong gap in terms of accountability and transparency. Accountability from the, delivery end, uh, transparency from the delivery end, and also accountability at the, user end. So,
Yes.
and also there is
Yes.
another problem that for mitigation we can calculate the benefit. And this is that much of emission will be reduced
Yes.
by that much of investment. But adaptation benefit cannot be measured. So we
Yeah.
also should have a strong indicator of measuring adaptation outcome. If we fail to do this, and if we fail to assign adaptation indicator to the funding, then the fund may not provide benefit to the community. So
Yes.
I think we also can, rearrange funding mechanism
Yes.
in that way.
Yeah, I so agree with you. In addition to the governance aspects for the fund, there's also the capacity building, because when the fund flows, the capacity to actually utilize this well has to be built into the systems, and also to the different actors deciding on what to prioritize, right? And in Bangladesh, we have good examples of programming that actually utilizes the government, the Bangladesh government allocation system, and then supplements it with external funding.
Right.
So Sweden, the EU, and Denmark, for instance, we support the Logic
Logic
project,
yes.
which you actually evaluate. You were part of evaluating that once at the early stage.
Yes, part of developing this concept. Right.
Yes, and this Logic, it's a pilot. Still, after 6 years, we're still pilot stage. It's in 9 districts, right? And the way it works is that you allocate the development funding, the annual development programming of Bangladesh to the local government system based on climate vulnerability indicators.
Right.
So already there, we have an established way of deciding where, who, and what are the most vulnerable indicators to allocate the funding to. And that is the challenge we have in Bangladesh, because we have all these great examples, and they actually work in these districts where we're experimenting or where we are testing this model. But then the national scale up, we're still not there. So how we can work together with civil society to get all this national scale up of good examples is going to be what we need to do for the next months. And I have to say, when we say government, we're thinking homogeneous, but it's actually different parts of government. You have the national system, but then the local government system from district level to union level, which are also deciding and prioritizing and all that, and have different levels of capacity of understanding about climate change vulnerability. They have to be addressed too. And this is where civil society are the actors that will push for this, having the right capacity, evidence, expertise at the local levels to be able to use the resources effectively.
Right.
Yeah.
The other concern, yes, I know about Logic, and most of the cases adaptation projects are risk focused. Reducing risk and also developing alternative livelihood options or resilient livelihood options for the climate change exposed communities. But when we talk about the residual impact of climate change or slow onset, for instance, salinity in the coastal areas, or the residual impact of sudden onset event, for instance, riverbank erosion, it's a sudden onset event, but it causes lots of impact through the impact chain. For instance, displacement and migration, dropout from school, increase of child labor, child marriage. But we are ignoring all this because there is a distant relationship with climate change and those secondary and tertiary risk of climate change. So, but they are very much linked to the human rights violation. So given the context, I also consider that we also should change our funding narrative. This should not be only primary risk focused, but also how to address the secondary and tertiary impacts of climate change that are forcing people to compromise their human rights, that are putting women under more stress, disproportionate vulnerabilities. So there's a gender lens of climate change impact, and our adaptation project also should include those.
Yes, and this is where I think your center is doing so much good work that we actually have to utilize and optimize, because you are not just forming the alliances needed to bring up this emerging issues and the health uh, the climate impacts on health is
That's right.
so evident now in Bangladesh in coastal areas, but also the partnerships that you're building with media, for
Right.
instance. So we have educated, well-informed media that's actually making
Right.
all this quite complex, interconnected issues on climate actually well known publicly as well, so that the demand towards the government and accountability of government response will continue, will be sustained. So there's so many ways
No, right.
to work at this.
And going to my first discussion, I mean, as I said that I now am part of civil societies, and that is also another concern why I am part of civil society, because I thought
Yeah.
that a broader civil society platform with knowledge and capacity is important,
Yes.
not only for advocacy or activism, but also implementing work in the local level.
Yes.
And that's why we established a platform. Around 40 national and international organizations are part of this platform. This is very flexible, and we do lots of work. I mean, series of work throughout the year for their capacity building, and also developing our common position towards COP, and also how to bring bottom or grassroots evidences of climate change impact into the national policy discourse.
Yes.
So that's why I love to work with civil societies, medias, and also for person like you, so that we can, communicate our critical feedbacks
Yes.
that we observe from the ground
Yeah.
for policy sensitizing
Yes.
and also influence the plan. So I think with support of all you, media, and also other members in Bangladesh, we can do better, and we can make Bangladesh really a climate resilient country.
Yeah, we're learning a lot from this kind of alliance building and platform building that civil society is leading in Bangladesh. A good example as well as the climate communicators community.
Yes, climate communicators.
Yeah,
right.
we're a lot of media, our climate media experts are actually part of that community. So we don't need this formalized structure and negotiate things that we have to do together. No, people will come when they see that they can contribute to a common cause. And in this platform of climate communicators, we know that we need to work with the academic,
Right.
we need to work with government. So we actually have government members, we have academic members, but the main focus is youth, the agency of youth, and the agency of media in the whole climate discourse, because they are the ones that can actually also push this urgency message, the urgent need for action for countries like Bangladesh.
And agency of women also.
And urgency of women.
Because in Bangladesh, we have many women-led organizations, but the representation of women in policy discourses is not that much. So we also providing a separate emphasis how to develop more professional from the female.
Yes.
And we provide internship, particular training, do partnering with women organizations, and this is really important, because when you talk about gender justice in the context of climate change, the women vulnerability and also rules are different, but they are ignored within the community, even within her household also.
Yes.
So that's why a different set of capacity building, the resilience building, and also expediting the rule for adaptation also, because women take the major role at household for making the house more resilient.
Yes.
In terms of informal business or asset mobilizing or networking, communicating. So we also need to put women at the center of resilience when we talk about household-based resilience.
Yeah. I was just in this discussion in Dhaka before coming here, where we had Bangladesh Bank, the SME, Ministry of Local Government, cooperatives, where they're actually now looking at the kind of policy changes or regulatory changes, so that we could support women-led cooperatives in the coastal area. So now the Bangladesh Bank is willing to sign
Right.
memorandum of understanding so that we development partners can come in with different types of
Mm.
de-risking mechanisms so that women-led businesses can access the commercial market. But like you said, there's so much we can do, so many things.
So many things we need
it's
lots of
very-
power
Yeah,
and
we need.
encouragement.
Yeah, we do.